From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex episode of the day. On today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have guest Mark Nolte. He's the co-founder and CEO of Start Talking. They provide online counseling and therapeutic services that can be done through HIPAA-compliant and encrypted video platforms. They offer behavioral health therapy services to EAP and insurance companies for their employees using teletherapy. Mark Nolte on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Mark?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for joining me. Are you in Denver? Let's see, North Denver, right?
Yes. Yeah. Just actually in Westminster, Colorado, just north of downtown Denver.
I appreciate you being on the show. I looked up and did a lot of homework on Start Talking, so I can't wait to get into it. But before we do that, will you give us a little, background about yourself? Give us something personal. Talk about maybe some family, where you grew up, where you went to school, stuff like that.
Yeah, my hometown's Jefferson City, Missouri, which is the capital of the state, about 30,000. I grew up there all my life. Then went to Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri. From 74 to 78, graduated with just a general business degree, liberal arts business degree. And then shortly after that, went to my first job out of college was with JCPenney, which is now filed for bankruptcy. Oh. And my first job as a manager trainee, after about 5 months, I got fired from JCPenney. And it was interesting because I went into the HR person's office, and he said, "Well, Mark, you're really a smart guy, but you're just not a fit here." And I was kind of one of those people that were, I always wanted to kind of change things or see if there's a better way and stuff. And they didn't want that. They just wanted someone who would be compliant, who would go by the company book or policy or whatever. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that probably was my sign that I probably need to be an entrepreneur. Because I'm not a very compliant person. And so that should have been my first inkling there. But did a couple business sales jobs. When I started out of college in 78, we just had a landline and a typewriter with carbon paper.
Right. So
it's been a long process converting over to the technology, but I take great pride in myself that I can adapt to it.
You remember when we in typing class when we had the little whiteout? We used to have to roll the paper up and put the little whiteout on the mistake.
Yeah. Well, my kids, they're millennials, and they wanted to know what CC meant on an email, and I said, "Well, that stands for carbon copy." And they go, "Well, what's a carbon copy?" I had to explain to them.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So started out doing cold calling and business sales. Going up to the top of the 9-story building and working my way down, knocking on doors, selling dictation equipment.
Is that what you were selling? Okay, great.
Yeah, Sony dictation equipment. And then before that, I sold a company for Acme Visible Records, which is the movable files and color-coded folders.
Okay.
So, which is all obsolete pretty much now. So,
right.
But that was 3 years of business, and then I got into medical sales. My first job was with Johnson & Johnson, selling their products used in the operating room. Working for a company called Ethicon, selling their mechanical staples used in surgery. Did that for about 5 years. Started in St. Louis with JCPenney, and moved to Little Rock, Arkansas with my first medical job with Johnson & Johnson, then got transferred to Oklahoma City, was there about 6 years, and then decided to move to Kansas City and start with a company called Stryker Endoscopy. We sold all the video equipment that's used if you ever have your gallbladder out or your knee scoped or anything like that. It's all the video equipment that they use. So back then in 1989, it was pretty cutting edge stuff because they were opening the patient to take out the gallbladder, and to be able to take the gallbladder out through the scope was really cutting edge stuff. And I remember talking to the general surgeons. I said, hey, we've got this course. You can learn how to do this. It was called a laparoscopic cholecystectomy, which is basically just taking the gallbladder out through your belly button, your umbilicus.
Right.
And said, hey, you can train you on how to do this. And they go, oh, it's just a fad. It'll never take off. And, Then about 6 months later, these surgeons were coming up to me and say, hey, Mark, do you still have that course I can go to learn how to do laparoscopic cholecystectomy? I said, well, sure. And I'm thinking, what's the difference? What had happened is one person in Oklahoma City where I lived had gone to the course, general surgeon, and he was booked for 3 months doing these procedures, and their caseload dropped off. And so,
but for the listeners, just to clarify, I think the reason that took off is because it kept you from having the scar across your belly, right?
Right. Well, and the other thing too, here's an interesting thing is that insurance companies wouldn't reimburse for it originally because it was considered experimental. Well, then they found out, the patient doesn't have to spend 3 days in the hospital if they can do it on an outpatient basis. And they can get back to work 2 or 3 weeks earlier. We're on board. So from an 18-month period, it went from experimental to that they reimburse for it. And if you didn't do it laparoscopically or through the scope, you had to justify why you didn't.
Needless to say, your sales targets were being met at that point.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I was working Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends we'd do the courses, and I worked 3 weeks straight without a day off. And my wife at the time said, aren't you going to have any time off this new job? I said, well, you got to make hay while the sun's shining. And it was some of the best years, sales wise and numbers wise, commission wise, that was. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And then after that, I started my own independent medical distributorship called Mark Medical.
Why? Why did you have an entrepreneurial bug at the time, or were you forced into that because of a job change? Why did that happen?
Interesting, great question. I was 45 at the time.
Okay.
And not to brag, but I had a good track record, good resume.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I was interviewing for these other jobs, and no one was interested. And all these guys that were late 20s, early 30s were getting the jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I, finally the light came on. It's like, well, you may have had a great past track record, but now you're 45. You're a has-been. Mm. And I thought, well, I can find another job at 45, but probably at 50, I'm going to face the same thing, or 55. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe this is time to kind of bite the bullet and decide to become my own independent medical distributorship.
Can we take a pause? Can we take a pause right there for the listeners?
Sure.
That is such. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that does happen. I know the companies aren't supposed to make hiring decisions on age and blah blah blah. Hey, let me just tell you, for the listeners, it happens all the time. In fact, I had an old mentor of mine one time, and he got to be 55, and I remember him calling me. I think I was 30 or something at the time. And he had a great career, but he turned 55 and he could not land anything else. And he called me one day. He called me one day and he's like, look, here's the deal. He's like, I don't care what your resume says. After you're 55, nobody gives a shit.
Well, it was interesting because I'm 64 now, but I was approaching my 60th birthday, and I was frustrated with Start Talking, and kind of had one of those weeks. I thought, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to go get a regular job and, get a paycheck. And I Googled what to do, how to get a job at age 60. And the first thing that came up, it says, unless you're 55 years of age or younger, forget it. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm back to being an entrepreneur.
It's true. It's true for the listener. If you want to be an entrepreneur to give yourself a little protection from being laid off as an older employee, you might want to try to start a business in your mid 40s or, around 50 or so, because after you turn 55 or so, you're right, you get laid off. It's tough to find a job. I know, because Riderflex is a recruiting firm, and we interview guys and girls that are 55 plus and older all the time that have been laid off, and they have problems finding things. It's real. It's a real problem. So anyway, not to go down a rabbit hole, but okay. So you start your own thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I started Mark Medical, which is an independent distributor. basically selling medical products used in the operating room. So I just took my skills from working for Johnson & Johnson and Stryker Endoscopy, and I hired 5 independent sales reps, all 1099s, straight commission, and started a distributorship and started picking up, as they say, lines, different companies that used independent representatives, because it's cheaper to use an independent representative than to hire a W-2 employee.
Okay.
And these are typically smaller companies that maybe don't have the notoriety like a Johnson & Johnson or Stryker or something like that. And but they want seasoned veterans that have been in the OR who know how to sell products in the operating room, because they don't have any sophisticated training. Basically, they do. With Johnson & Johnson, I had 8 weeks of training. With these independent lines, you'd go in, maybe do a 2-day training session on a product, and that's it. You're on your own.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and I still say that, the training I received in Johnson & Johnson, I still use today, because it was such a phenomenal training experience.
How long did you have this first business?
I had it for about 11 years.
Wow, that's pretty good. Did you have employees, or you just ran it yourself, your own little LLC?
I had one employee that was kind of my administrative assistant, and all the rest of them were independent reps.
Nice. What was your biggest year in revenue for the company? You remember?
I think we did about somewhere around 250, 300,000.
Okay. All right. But for
I'm sorry, that is in commissions. Sales, it was over $1 million.
Okay. That's a pretty good run for 11 years. That's pretty good. Now, now at that point, you're like, hey, owning my own business is pretty cool. I want to continue to do that.
Right.
All right. How did you walk us into start talking? Talk about the transition. Go ahead.
Well, so I had the medical distributorship, and I started in 2004. And not to get into politics, but Obamacare came about.
Okay.
And it changed the business.
I see.
That the reimbursement was not there, the commissions were not there. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall where the business was going.
Okay.
And this is probably around 2010, shortly after Obamacare was passed. And I thought, I'm seeing what's going on in the industry, that the money's not going to be there, the commission's not going to be there. They started restricting reps like myself being in the operating room because of HIPAA compliance and all that stuff, where I'd been going in all the time. And now it was very restrictive. You had to do these things called rep tracks, which basically is a credentialing process. You had to pay $50 or $100 for each hospital you did that. It just got cost prohibitive being a thing. And I thought, well, I can sit there and ride this thing till it's dead, or I didn't really want to wait for the other shoe to drop.
Okay.
And I'm so glad I didn't. And I went to a thing in Kansas City where I lived, and it was a Google Fiber was the first city in the United States to get Google Fiber cable. And they were looking for things that would need Google speed on the internet. And they did a weekend hackathon type thing. And they said, hey, Mark, would you be willing to, lead up this group to do video therapy on the internet, which is now teletherapy. And the interesting thing at the time, this was 2010, I was diagnosed with depression.
You were.
And because of my own personal experience with depression, I tell people I was one of the lucky ones because I went and got help, and now I'm one of the lucky ones because I live a happy and productive life. But it made me realize how antiquated the system was. And it was just ironic that I got asked to lead this group to do something for video therapy, because I'm thinking, if they really knew I was suffering from depression myself, they may not want me to be leading this group.
Wow.
But
how old were you at the time? And tell me about were you married with kids? Like when was this personally for you?
It's interesting you say that. I got divorced, about a year or two before that.
Okay, so
So,
that probably played into the depression. I mean, I'm just guessing. I don't know. I'm not
yeah. Well, ironically, after I got separated, I got better.
interesting.
So, so it was the marriage that maybe was part of the issue. So, but it
Okay.
played a part of getting a divorce. It was
Okay.
one of the
Okay.
several things. So,
Okay.
yeah. So my kids at the time were, I had 3 kids. The last one just graduated from high school, so they were off in college. And so,
Mm.
even if I had stayed married, I was an empty nester,
Okay.
and
Okay.
so
Okay.
this is a good time to start it.
Got you. So you did this talk, this speech when they invited you, right?
Yeah, it was a weekend hackathon. You come up with some kind of product, and you started on a Friday night. And you went all weekend, and then Sunday night you presented your product. And we said, "Oh,
Okay.
we're going to do video therapy," because it wasn't called teletherapy at the time. It's just like
Okay.
we're going to do therapy by video. And I thought this is the future. This is where things are going to go.
Interesting.
And this would have been 2000, actually 12. I think I said, well, yeah, it's been 12. So I met my former co-founder in Kansas City, and we kind of started developing this. But we were way ahead of the game. The good news, people say, well, my friends would say, how's your new, business going? I go, well, the good news, we're early in the market. The bad news, we may go bankrupt before the market matures enough.
Were you funding it yourself? Was this all bootstrapped with you and your
All
co-founder?
bootstrapping.
Okay.
Yeah, all bootstrapping.
Okay.
And we did get into a accelerator that lasted for about 3 months. We got $20,000 to do that, which is not really that much.
Not that much, and you had to give them a piece of your company.
Exactly, 6%.
Ooh, 6% for 20 grand. Ooh,
yeah,
that's okay. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. You probably wouldn't do that again, huh?
No, and that was incorporated in the state of Kansas, and I closed that corporation and moved to Denver here, and then reopened
gotcha.
incorporated state of Colorado as an LLC.
Gotcha. Good move.
Yeah.
When you restarted the LLC in Colorado, was it by yourself or with the co-founder again?
No, we parted ways. We're still good friends or whatever. He couldn't afford to keep bootstrapping, so we just kind of parted ways. And
so, can I take a pause right there? This is a good note for the listeners. Now,
sure.
I don't want to give out legal advice and all that. You make sure you call counsel and get advice on things. But there are ways, if you get yourself into a sticky situation early where you started something, but there's really no revenue there yet, and you gave away a bunch of equity and people aren't involved, or maybe you had a co-founder that kind of started checking out and they had some equity or whatever your situation is, you can just close the business and restart depending on your situation. That is an option. If you want to do that, I encourage you to get some counsel on that just to make sure you don't get jammed up, but it is an option. So good move on your part.
Right.
Yeah. Good move.
Yeah. And so here was the interesting thing with the other co-founder. So my background is in sales and marketing. I'm just an old sales guy.
Yeah.
My co-founder, he was a programmer, a tech guy.
Yep. Which you needed at the time.
Yeah. And at the time, he says we need to raise $1.2 million, and we need to develop our own video platform and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, wow, it's like, we don't even have customers yet. And he says, and then it's going to take $200,000 to maintain this. And so I kind of was looking around, and I said to this co-founder, I said, there's this thing called Zoom out here that really looks like what we're doing here. And, if we want to develop our own program later, that's fine. But how about we just take this Zoom and get customers.
Yeah, get some revenue in. You can always pivot later, get some revenue going.
There you go. And so this was September of 2016 that I signed up as a Zoom customer. And we had to have the HIPAA compliant encrypted version of it. So we didn't use the public version.
I see.
And, I'm thinking this is easy. It works. They got my own support system if there's any tech issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, I'm just going to go with this. And that's where we and I'm a sales guy. I just want to get business. A tech guy, I understand. He wants to build things. He wants to develop things. but it would have taken us forever and a lot of money. And
A lot of
then
money, a lot of debt.
there's cheaper versions out there. So that was a critical
Yep.
decision.
Good move.
And that's a little bit why we parted ways as well. Like I said, we're still good friends, but he wanted to build something, and I understand he's a programmer and all that stuff. But I said, let's take something that's out there, a third-party solution, and get customers.
Right.
And that's kind of where we parted ways, and I became a customer, and like I said, with Zoom in September of 2016.
And so now do us a favor, give us the Start Talking overview for people that have never heard of it. Give a nice overview of where it is, what it does, how to use it. Go for it.
Yeah. So it is basically teletherapy. So people that may not know, it's like telemedicine, but it's for behavioral health therapy. Okay. It's referred to as teletherapy. So instead of seeing your therapist in the office, you can do it by video.
Which is great. Especially right now. We're recording this August 11th, 2020, right in the middle of COVID. So right now it's really awesome, right?
Yeah. And I'll have to tell you I'll have to tell you my story about COVID too.
Okay. All right.
At the right time.
Yeah. But I interrupted you. So go ahead. Telehealth. Yep.
Yeah. So it's telehealth. So it can be, we use the Zoom platform, which it's funny, a few months ago before COVID, I had to explain, what it is, but basically now everyone knows that it can be used from any device, smartphone, tablet, or computer. Mm-hmm. And we contract with independent practicing therapists. Now we started in Colorado. I have 16 therapists here. Now we've expanded to California, Texas, and we're looking to go to Arizona, Oregon, and state of Washington.
So if you have a therapist that you want to use, you have to use one that's in your state. Is that how that works?
As ironic as it seems, the therapist, the therapist has to be licensed in the state that the patient resides.
Okay. Didn't know
that. So if I'm
right?
licensed in Colorado as a therapist, but the patient's in California, but I'm not licensed in California, I can't do teletherapy with them.
Okay. Good to know. All right.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I'm recruiting from different states.
All right. And is it an app that you download, or do you just go to the website? Go ahead.
Yeah, you just go to the website. You'll see the 16 therapists there. We're actually up to 25 now, but we got to add those on.
Okay.
You click on their profile. They'll have a picture there and an inscription. You click on their profile. It has a short paragraph about their philosophy on therapy, what they specialize in, and all the EAPs or insurance companies they're credentialed with. And if you like what they have to say, then you can, there's also some have a video. Yep. You can click on our booking widget, which goes straight to their calendar, and you can book a therapy session with a therapist online without ever making a phone call.
And now, do I book that session? How do I make sure the insurance pays for it? Do I have to fill out a bunch of forms? What about all that?
Yeah, well, you'd want to set an appointment with a therapist that accepted your insurance or your EAP, and it shows a list of the insurance companies or EAPs they accept.
I see. Okay, very good. Right. And then when I book it, does the therapist, they just bill my insurance? Is that super easy, or how does that work?
Right. I'll use EAP, employee assistant programs. Okay. Usually with that, you get 5 sessions. It can vary anywhere from 3 to 12 sessions, but average is about 5 or 6. They are already pre-approved. So you just go through how many sessions you need at the end of 5 sessions. And then if you need more, you can sometimes get more, but it's all pre-approved. The therapist just clicks a button to fill out a 1-page application online and sends it electronically. So there's no paperwork to fill out or scan or email.
Wow, okay, see, now that's great. I was wondering how easy it was. So if I go to starttalking.io, I look at the therapist list, I click on the person I want, I book a meeting. That's it. And then they do the paperwork. Wow.
Yep. And there's no plain phone tag trying to say, oh, I'd like to make an appointment with you. And the therapist calls back and says, oh, I'm booked. How about Friday? No, I can't do Friday. That kind of stuff. So, and I'm a baby boomer. And so my generation, they still want to do phone calls or whatever, but the millennials, they do not want to use their phone, and they want a simple process of doing it all online.
Yep.
And that's why some of my older therapists, I have to tell them, it's like, listen, you have to accommodate the current generation. The millennials, as of this year, are the largest working force. It used to be the baby boomers, my generation. It's no longer the case. So whether you think it's right or wrong, you still, you need to accommodate what the millennials want to do.
And when I book the meeting, is it always video Zoom, or can I just do it on the phone if I want?
You could call, there is a number you could call if you want, to do the video session, the therapy session.
Yeah. If I'm booking a session, is it always
it's only video?
It's only video. Okay. Which it probably should be, because it's supposed to replace the fact that you were going to see them in person anyway. Plus the therapist got to see your facial expressions and all that, right?
Well, here's the deal. The therapists are seeing patients now in the office, a few exceptions, but who wants to do therapy with like this?
Yeah. with the
mask covering their face.
Yeah. Seriously.
And one of my therapists said, one of my patients was crying, but I couldn't tell because I couldn't see behind his mask.
Yeah, that's a killer. I'm sure the patients would rather do it through Zoom anyway. So, okay. Wow, very good. Good news is you were an early Zoom user, way before everybody else was doing it.
I was Zoom before Zoom was cool.
That's great. I love it. Okay.
And one thing I want to share with you is that we found out through a pilot program we did with an EAP that there's a 30% less cancellation rate or no-show rate with online therapy.
Wow, I bet the therapists love that. How do you? And now, are the therapists contractors? Are they partners? Are they employees? How do you have? What's the business model? Take me through the
business model is they're all 1099s. They're all independent contractors. In other words, they have their own private practice. They have their physical office location, which before COVID we would offer. Not everyone's a candidate for teletherapy. For teletherapy, it's more for mild to moderate mental health issues.
Oh, I see.
So if someone has a severe mental health issue, they probably need to be seen in person.
Okay.
So our first tier of therapy would be do video therapy, but they're not a candidate. We did have the option. The secondary therapy would be to do in an office. So, and we give them a video platform, HIPAA compliant encrypted video platform, Zoom.
Okay.
We give them access to a software management program called Simple Practice.
Okay.
We give that to them free. And then we have the booking widget on there. We can do videos for them if they want. We put their profile on the website. We do all the digital marketing and social media. And in return, we take an administration fee from each hourly rate.
Okay. So let me pause right there. So if I had my own practice, right? I'm a psychiatrist, whatever. I got my own practice. I've had it for years. I can also partner with Smart Talking, and I can get additional clients from there, because a client may click on Start Talking. They'll look through the list. They may pick me as their therapist. And then I get additional clients. So it's a way for them to increase revenue through this traditional platform. Okay.
You hit the nail on the head. I tell them, I said, let me fill the hours that you're not currently getting revenue in.
Yeah, great. Okay, very good. Right. And then they just give you a cut, basically, an administration fee.
And they don't pay anything until they make money. I mean, it's not like I'm asking for an upfront fee or an initial startup fee or anything like that. Do they push current clients to the platform? We allow them to use the Zoom video platform for their own clients if they want to.
Okay, so if I had 20 clients, I sign up with you to get new business, I can move my current clients onto the platform too.
Yep.
Wow. Why wouldn't you do that?
Thank you. Because here's the conversation. This brings me to my point. So I've been talking to therapists for 4 years about doing teletherapy before COVID.
All right.
I said, listen, millennials, this is how they prefer to do therapy. There's a 30% less cancellation rate. It will set you up with everything. And all these therapists were like, oh, it's just a fad. It'll never take off. It's not as effective and da-da-da. Then COVID happened. And all of a sudden, these people I've been talking to for 4 years begging, they say, hey, Mark, I'm ready to do that teletherapy thing. And can you have me set up by noon today?
I bet you
I'm
are.
like, really? I've been talking to you for 4 years now. You need to be set up by noon today.
By the way,
quickly became believers.
By the way, I know I told you the administration fee was X, but now it's Y, just so you know.
Yeah, that's right. it paid to be early. And I read a book about if it doesn't seem right, or if you seem too early, you're at the right pace. If it doesn't seem like you're early or whatever, you're probably too late in doing a startup.
I just watched the TED talk, and I can't remember. I should be plugging it for the person, but I can't remember it. But the guy was identifying the 4 primary reasons for startup success, and he said it was the funding, the leadership, the timing, and something else. I'll think of it in just a second. Anyway, he was listening to the top 4, and he said, surprisingly, the number one reason that they really take off is timing. It's just timing.
Yeah.
And so perfect timing for you, my friend, with COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad for the COVID situation and what it's done to people, but hey, great for your business. So cool.
Well, I feel bad because I don't want to sound like a profiteer.
Right. No, I hear you. But still, I mean, hey, good. I mean, it's a blessing in disguise out of all the bad shit that's happening. So,
right.
You know,
and if this means that it's either this or they don't get therapy.
Right.
Because in California, they're not allowed to go in their offices there. So it's either they do video or they don't get therapy at all.
Wow. So, that's a dangerous thing. I mean, then that starts all kinds of other problems. Okay.
And then just to demonstrate my point, who wants to do therapy like this?
Right. I mean, seriously. Yeah. I mean, I don't
in the office.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you use Zoom? So great. Wow. Great. And it doesn't cost the patient any more, whether it's copay or whatever it is, than they would have had to pay.
Right.
The doctor gets, they're giving you a little cut for the admin fee. So maybe it eats into their, patient margin, so to speak, a little bit, but it's a platform that they can use that drives additional new revenue. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And, like I said, it's better than having zero revenue. In other words, let me fill the hours that you wouldn't normally be, that you don't have any patients scheduled.
So you can. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. You just continue to see your private patients, and then whatever extra hours you have, let me fill those up with revenue paying patients.
Now, okay. So I like it's a very simple model. I think it's great. What protects you from competitors and everything else? How do you battle that?
Well, there's not to say that competitors couldn't do this, and I've had that presented to me several times. But here's the deal: when someone comes to me, especially an investor, an angel investor, and says, "Well, what's your IP?" Well, we don't really have any per se. What's going to prevent someone like Google to do this? I go, well, you know what? Great minds think alike. I thought, well, how hard is this going to be? You just get a video platform like Zoom, and they're going to be beating my door down. No. It's not the case. There's a lot of things you have to learn. I call it the psychology of selling to psychologists. They're not your typical business people. It takes a lot of work, and there's a lot of issues and bugs to work out. That I figured that out, and it would take them probably 2 years to figure that out on their own.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy as they think.
It never is, right? Everybody. People that haven't tried to start a business or people that haven't tried to build a brand, I mean, they really just have no clue how difficult that is. It is super hard. Well, how big is the company today? I mean, I don't know if you want to share revenue, but maybe can you give us just maybe, I don't know, number of employees, number of patients, however you describe your growth and size?
Yeah. So we have 25 therapists on board now.
Okay.
We do about 100 patients per month.
Okay.
So, if that's 5 sessions, that's what, 500 video sessions a month.
Okay. Okay. And the doctors pay a monthly admin fee, or do they pay by session? How do they pay?
They pay by session. We take a percentage of their hourly rate.
I see. Okay. Okay. Very good. And are you just growing organically, or are you spending lots of money on marketing? How are you growing it?
I found out there's a company called, this is a plug for Upwork. I got a person from Bangladesh that specializes in digital marketing.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I need a list of 250 people, or a list of 250 therapists in these states. I need it California, Texas, Oregon, whatever. It's $5 an hour. It takes her 10 hours to get a list of 250 therapists. It cost me
Wow.
$50 to get a list of 250 therapists. That is extremely cheap compared to buying a list, which is going to be several $100s, if not maybe in the thousands.
So that gave you your list of people to call and pitch to. But how about online marketing? Are you just doing social media, or are you doing pay per click? What are you doing?
I'm using HubSpot, and we're doing drip emails
Okay.
where we send out a sequence of
I see.
emails, 5 emails.
I see. Okay. Are you planning on building an app, or you don't think that's needed right now?
We're in the process of raising funds now, and if
Oh,
we get the funds, we're looking to raise $500,000, and if we get the funds, we would do an app and
okay.
do
Okay.
all that. But right now, it's kind of piecemeal. We're taking third-party applications and creating this platform.
Is this what you would call? Is this what you'd call an angel round, or friends and family, or what are you calling it?
It's an angel round.
Okay. All right. Is this the first cash you've taken on then? First big cash?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. So you bootstrapped it up to this point.
Right. Right.
Is
And
it
we're
making
now
you go ahead?
we're breaking even. We're
okay,
making revenue. We're making revenue, but we're breaking even. So we're not profitable.
Is that breaking even including paying yourself, or not including paying yourself?
Not paying myself.
Okay. All right. So I'm just thinking like an angel investor. I always like to clarify, like, define breaking even.
Yeah.
So all right. So if you were paying yourself, you'd still be at a loss. So all right. So
Right.
do you mind me asking, how are you? I mean, you made a lot of money through your other businesses, and so you've been able to support this thing. Like, how are you? What are you eating, ramen noodles every day, or how are you surviving, my friend?
Well, it's interesting because I started this in my late 50s, and I have a financial advisor, and he says, "Well, Mark, at 59 and a half, you can start pulling out some of your 401k."
Okay.
And that's what I've been doing in the last 4 years. Is just, yeah.
Woo, right there. Right there's a pause. Everybody take a deep breath. Not paying himself and dipping into his 401k to get this thing going. That's the kind of sacrifice you better be ready to take if you want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I hope you're not spending your own 401k money and giving away a bunch of equity to other people yet.
No, I have 100% equity at this point.
Very good. Okay, very good. And I'm sure when that first angel just tells you the check that they want to write, you're going to be careful on how much you give away.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
why
I would still like to own 50% if that's possible.
How about 51?
Yeah, 51. Yeah, exactly.
Why 500K?
That's what we're going to hire, about 5 more people.
All right.
We've figured out exactly, I need to duplicate myself. I need someone for business development.
Okay.
At least one of me, if not more, because I'm doing all that. I need an administrative assistant to handle all these EAP insurance contracts and to do all the contracts with the therapists when we bring them on board. And then I would like to bring on some programmers too, 1 or 2, to kind of develop that app and do some other things like that to make it more sophisticated.
Have you thought about getting creative with some software developers and giving them a piece of the action on equity to get them to build some stuff for free?
That's a possibility. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Angel investors, I always watch them. Their eyebrows kind of raise anytime you're trying to raise cash just for payroll. That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can
and
be
we'll
done,
do more social media marketing and stuff like that too. We'll put more money into that so we can recruit more therapists.
Okay. By the way, have you thought about going to some of your therapists and saying, "Hey, why don't you guys be partners? And I'm looking to do a cash raise," and hit your therapist and see if they want to invest?
Yeah, well, nothing against therapists, but they're not. What I found out quickly is they're not the greatest business people, and they're great at what they were trained for to do therapists, but they're not the greatest business people, and because of that, they're not the best marketers of their practice, and that's where we come in.
Okay. Now, listen, since I'm a business owner, Riderflex, as a recruiting and consulting firm, now that you've been on the podcast, in case I'm getting like depressed or super stressed out, do I get to use the platform for free?
No, we'll have to charge you something.
I'm just messing around. Congratulations on getting it to where it is. Can I ask you a couple of entrepreneurial advice questions for anybody listening that might want to start something? This is your second business you've had now.
Right.
I know we could do hour podcast on the topic, but if you had to leave the listeners with a couple of pieces of advice, let's say they're aspiring entrepreneurs, but they haven't started yet. They haven't quit their job and started yet. What would you tell them today?
Well, you know, I guess I had a little bit of advantage. The two previous medical jobs I mentioned, the last one, Stryker, was straight commission. So I was used to, only eating what I kill
All right.
type thing. So
All
I was
right.
used to living a little bit of that roller coaster.
Mhm.
And, if you're a person that's used to getting a paycheck every 2 weeks and getting benefits, that's something you got to think about. And, you know, it, whether you're married and you got a young family, whatever. See, one of the advantages I have is that at the time I got divorced and my kids were all adult children. So if it was only me I was feeding, and so if I needed to eat pork and beans out of a can, I could do that if I had to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit different if you're married and you got young kids or whatever type thing. So I just say mentally prepare yourself for that. And one of the things that someone told me when I started my Mark Medical business, they go, well, you've burnt the bridge. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you can't go back to being a regular employee. I go, what do you mean? I can do that. He goes, no. He goes, once they figured out that that you can do this on your own and that you're, kind of a non-compliant person, they're not going to hire you.
Yeah.
So it scared me a little bit, but there is some truth to that. But at the time I was 45.
Yeah.
And so just preparing for those things.
There is some truth to that. Once you've been an entrepreneur, I can just tell you, as a recruiter, when I see somebody that owned their own business once or twice and now they're trying to go back to being a regular employee, I'll just tell you right now, as a recruiter, my immediate thought is this: okay, you've already tasted the fruit of being captain and you've already been an entrepreneur. It's going to be really hard for you to go back to just being an employee that takes orders from other people. It's going to be tough,
Right.
Really tough.
And that person interview realizes you're not going to be very compliant.
That's right. No doubt about it. It can be done. So I don't want to scare people into thinking that, once you become an entrepreneur, you can never be an employee, but the person interviewing you, they are going to have those thoughts. So be ready for that. How about this? You said your age earlier, so I'm going to bring it up again real quick. How old are you again? What was it? 60 what?
64.
64. Okay. I mean, it takes a lot of juice to run a company as an entrepreneur, and it takes even more to do it at the age of 64. So I commend you for that. I mean, it's not easy.
Well, thank you. It's ironic. I went back to my 50-year high school reunion a few years ago, and people go, well, Mark, when are you going to retire? I'm like, retire? I'm starting a new business. What are you talking about?
I love that. If you could call that kid coming out of that school in Missouri back when he was 21 years old, what would you tell him today, knowing what you know?
I guess someone like that, I would say, go work for a big corporation for 5 years.
Okay.
And get that great training in the industry you want to be in. It's different now than it was back then. Now they have entrepreneur programs in the universities and colleges. And at first I was kind of like, you can't, you got to learn by the school of hard knocks. But I've been impressed with what they've been able to teach in the universities as far as entrepreneurship. But still, I think working for a corporation, let them pay for your training and get that experience and learn how the big corporations work and get that, with me in the medical, they taught us anatomy and surgical procedures and all that stuff. And I used that for 30 years till I made the switch over to teletherapy. And, then in your late 20s or early 30s, think about maybe, always be looking for the next opportunity or whatever to, become an entrepreneur.
What's Mark's core purpose in life now? When you think about it, when you have reflection moments, and I know from experience, because I'm 53, And as you get older, you have more reflection time. When you reflect back now, or you've, let me rephrase, now that you've gotten older, your core purpose has probably changed from what it was before. Now, what is it? At the age you're at, what is your core purpose in life when you wake up every day?
Yeah. So, what you described there, reflective, I call them come to Jesus meetings. Sometimes when you're driving home or whatever, you've had a long day and you're thinking, what am I doing? This is tough. Right. Why am I doing this? You kind of have a come to Jesus meeting with yourself. It's like, I could go get a job and make a regular paycheck and all that stuff.
Right.
And part of it is, I'm trying to run a business here. And so I think about the numbers, but really, this is a social impact business. That was my whole thing going through my own personal struggles with depression. I realized there had to be an easier way, a more productive way to get therapy. And that's why I thought of this teletherapy solution. And so my mantra is to make it easier and more accessible for people to get the therapy they need.
That's great.
And,
that's great.
To take the stigma out of it. And I belong to a group called the Stability Group, and there's about 200 people now nationwide. We're all successful professionals who either have suffered or currently have some mental health issue, but have been on to be successful. So I go around doing speeches to groups about addressing the mental health issues and all that kind of stuff. And for my own past experience, and if I can help someone, get over that, especially men are the worst about getting help, where guys are like, I don't have a problem, but my buddy's got a problem. And, actually we, have issues to get addressed. So that's kind of my mantra, because I realize it is a business and we need to make money, but at the same time, we're making a service here that can make it easier and more accessible for people to get therapy, especially in the rural areas of the United States.
I love it, my friend. If you can build a business, make a little money, and help people all at the same time, that's a win-win. Yeah. Mark, I appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast and sharing your story. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time. It's been a lot of fun.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.